1968, the student anti-war movement was split apart by a minor, heavily sponsored faction, the Weathermen. This grouping of white-collar, upper-middle-class, privileged youth fractured the traditional base of the Democratic Party along cultural lines, with their hatred of the institutions of U.S. government, their hatred of farmers, industrial workers, science, and labor. They claimed they were making a revolution to empower the third world and minorities in the U.S. In reality, they just wanted to get off. To get off with sex, with drugs, with rhetoric, with money. And whatever stood in the way of their thrills, they would destroy. These were the youth born with everything. They were students at the top colleges. Their president set a course for peace and prosperity for the U.S. that could have lasted for generations to come. And they cursed the United States and planted bombs. Leaders of the Weathermen, Bernardine Dohrn, Bill Ayers, and others, issued terrorist threats against symbols of government power, becoming heroes of the counterculture for acts of attempted homicide. As if by miracle, these youth evaded any serious prosecution for their crimes by the CIA and others, and went underground before reemerging within the ranks of civilized society. On the morning of January 28, 2008, Tony Rezko was taken from his home to federal prison. The judge in the case immediately revoked Rezko's request for bail after discovering that $3.5 million had been made available to him in April 2007 by an overseas business associate, Nadbi Auchi. This money was not from just any business partner. The Iraqi billionaire worked closely with Saddam Hussein in the oil for food scandal and later joined the Bremer puppet government. Presently, he lives in England as a top player in the British and European oligarchy and heads the Anglo-Arab Council. But the April 2007 transfer was not the first time Auchi had made millions available to Rezko. In May 2005, Auchi's company, General Mediterranean, made a different $3.5 million loan to Rezko, only weeks before Rezko's wife purchased a piece of land in a prestigious neighborhood in Hyde Park, Illinois. As a political fundraiser and advisor, Tony Rezko became a close associate of leading figures in Illinois politics. These associations were exposed in the federal investigation Operation Board Game, which found that Rezko was using his Illinois political connections to extort kickbacks from investment firms seeking billions of dollars worth of state business. Auchi and Rezko's ties do run deep. They were also business partners in a $160 million deal in Chicago, which was only one of Rezko's shady business deals. As a real estate developer, Rezko contacted elected officials whom he had worked with to solicit public funds to develop low-income slum housing. The Cottage View terrace housing project cost the public over $14 million, while the land itself was signed over by the state for $1. Tony Rezko and his partner, Allison Davis, of the Davis, Minor, Barnhill, and Gallen law firm, purchased that land at that price and received over $850,000 in service fees paid to their firm, New Kenwood LLC. Aside from the service fees, Davis stands to receive close to $1 million in federal tax credits. In the defense of low-income tenants, the Davis, Minor, Barnhill, and Gallen firm represented the community action group Acorn in a lawsuit against Household Finance, an offshoot of the historic British drug trade bank, HSBC. Household Finance was issuing predatory loans to low-income citizens when Acorn filed a suit in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. But the suit was settled out of court, and HSBC agreed to funnel an undisclosed sum to Acorn. This occurred before the current investigations by over a dozen states and the FBI for massive voter registration fraud. It is unclear whether the HSBC money was used for this fraud. In 2008, Acorn's leadership suddenly changed when Wade Rathke was forced to quit his post after it was revealed that his brother embezzled close to $1 million from the group. Acorn survived the scandal thanks to a bailout from Drummond Pike, a very close associate of George Soros, whose alliance with the City of London has been indispensable in their hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. The community action groups, which attracted so many students in the 1960s, had originated under the guidance of Saul Alinsky, an anti-Roosevelt, anti-labor radical who helped spread the popular ideology of 1930s Italy, local control. Alinsky studied under John Rawlings Rees at the British Establishment for Psychological Warfare, the Tavistock Institute, and was later promoted through the University of Chicago and given funding to set up the initial test models for what were promoted as community action groups. These fronts fund disenfranchised and often poor, non-white members of a community with money directed from foreign and related intelligence interests. They encourage community organizers to fight supposedly self-evident targets that are supposed to be the cause of their oppression. With each local community action group fighting for its own perceived self-interest, a coordinated national movement for change were impossible. At New Kenwood LLC, Tony Rezko partnered up with Howard J. Stanback of the Woods Fund, which passed over $250,000 to the Chicago division of Acorn. On the board of the Woods Fund, which sponsored other community action groups, is the 64-year-old education reformer and professor of education at the University of Illinois, weatherman terrorist Bill Ayers. His wife, Bernadine Dorn, is a professor of law at Northwestern University and has worked for years at the law firm of the Chicago Board of Trade, Sidley Austin, where Barack Obama began his legal career. Up to the present day, the two weathermen have never renounced the crimes they committed in the 1960s and 70s and recently confessed that they could have done more. Though Rezko has been convicted for his crimes in the Chicago political scene, it's clear that his criminal connections run much higher. Perhaps most alarming are his multiple connections to the very City of London financial and intelligence establishment, which is hell-bent on ensuring that the United States does not move to solve the current international financial crisis through a revival of the policies and principles of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But what will happen to poor Rezko? On October 9, 2008, a federal judge in the case of Antoine Tony Rezko agreed to postpone the sentencing, which was initially scheduled to occur 1 week before the presidential election. But what will Tony get? With 16 federal counts against him, is there anyone he could implicate to lessen his own sentence? Is there anyone else involved in the case who could take the heat off of poor Tony Rezko? What if justice just can't wait this time?